Good evening again, friends, and it's a joy to be with you here today. And we now come to the end of this book, which we've been actually talking about for more than a year now, the essence of self realization, and what a great journey it has been. And the last chapter of this book, in a sense, summarizes this entire book because the topic of it is self realization. And to some of us, it may seem, let's maybe put it to all of us probably listening to this, it may seem a little huge, this topic, a little huge for us to comprehend in many ways, because probably until we reach that state of self realization, it's going to be very difficult to talk about it because we're just doing it merely on an intellectual level. But yet, all the masters who've come, have done a tremendous job of bringing to us that description, that understanding in the best way they could. As Yogananda ji wrote a poem, Samadhi, and in that as well, where he describes the entire experience of Samadhi into a poem. Now, that's a huge accomplishment in a sense to be able to write from that state of awareness. But for us to understand this topic, I just wanted to share a little bit on where do we begin with this. And when we talk about self-realization, we see it in terms of another way we can put it as God realization, and the understanding that when I realize the divine in myself. And if you can't think of it as God realization yet, people can also think of it in terms of their own highest potential, realizing my own highest potential. And even people in the world who have regular lives have this question that comes up quite often. So say you're a businessman. One of the questions that a good businessman would have would be, how do I be the best businessman I can be? How do I achieve my highest potential in that field? Or the same for an artist or any field for that matter. But then you come onto the spiritual search and then you start to understand that this concept of self-realization is not realizing my little limited self. It's myself with the capital S. It's realizing the divine in myself. That's what everyone's seeking. That's where I'm trying to go. And when we look at it in terms of when we first begin on this journey, if you're even listening to this video or you're reading this book on such a topic of self-realization, you've probably had the question yourself, where you've reached a point and you've looked around you and you've said, why is everybody so busy? Where are they going? Why are they always running? And people seem so busy and they seem to be doing really important things. But why? And why earn that 700 billion if I do make it? And then what? So say you've reached that level and then you realize there's got to be more to it than that. Probably the next question we have is, even if you have a regular life or lifestyle, we all come upon this question of, I'm not tapping into my true potential. I know I have more than this. I'm stuck in a busy routine, but there's more that's going on here, and I'm not tapping into my true potential. And then when we come a little deeper and we start probing into the teachings of meditation, we start to understand that if I want to change my circumstances around me, if I want to change anything in my life, it begins with changing myself. As I begin to change, the circumstances and everything around me starts to change. And that's where we realize if we want to seek this highest potential in ourselves, which is God realization, I need to do the work. I need to change myself, my habit patterns. I need to meditate. When I do that, there's an inner freedom and inner peace that I begin to touch, an inner joy. And that's so much more fulfilling than anything I ever got before this. And when we touch that, it's so contagious, we want to just share it with everyone whom we meet, right? And so I wanted to read at this point the last stanza of this book for you. And the question is, when will you find God? Yogananda says, when all your desires for other things are finished, when you realize that the only thing worth having is Him, when every thought, every feeling is drenched with the love of God. And so when we think of this concept again, what is this reality that I'm trying to touch? If I'm meditating, if I'm trying to go beyond all desire, and you look at the ancient scriptures of India, the ancient scriptures have always talked of the Atman, the soul, and they always tell us, all great masters, all spiritual paths tell us the same truth, that there is an underlying reality beyond this personality, beyond my ego definitions I've created of myself, that I can touch, that each and every one of us can touch. And that's the Atman, the soul. And the more we get in touch with that, the more we become self-realized, the more we start to tap into our true self. It's like if you have an onion and you start to peel away the many layers of the onion, and then you reach the core, the center. And that's so much different from what it looked from the outside. And so it is by getting in touch with that. I wrote down a quote which I wanted to read to you by Lahiri Mahashaya, which I read the other day. And he says, "He is wise who devotes himself to realizing, not only to reading ancient revelations." So it is that we cannot get there, and we all know that. We cannot get there by just reading about this. We cannot get there by reading such a wonderful book alone. We need to take and internalize those words that Swamiji has given us in this book. We need to meditate on it. We need to make it a part of our reality. We need to realize it in ourselves. So everything comes down to that. And Lahiri Mahashaya would say, solve all your problems through meditation. And Swami Kriyananda would say, self-realization is the key to everything. And why did he say this? Why this concept? Because it is the answer to every question we had. Why is everyone running? They're going in a wrong direction. Yes. Okay, so what do I do about it? How do I start to change myself? If I understand that I need to meditate, why am I meditating? How do I begin? How do I begin to change my thoughts that changes my reality? The answer all comes down to putting this goal of self-realization, God-realization. How do I love God more? How do I bring Him more into my life? And when we do that, we begin to understand how to take the right steps towards our true goal. And this, in a sense, is the essence of what Yogananda ji brought to the entire world through all his teachings. It sums up in these two words, so to say, self-realization. That's what he brought to the world. And that's what we all can live towards, can strive towards by setting that as the goal. And as we begin to change, we notice a little bit of meditation. I become a kinder person. My heart opens. So I give out that love, that kindness into the world. And so the world responds to me. And I start living in a reality that's so different from what I was living in before. And so as we begin to practice these teachings, and I'll just end by saying, we have a beautiful DVD on yoga created by our center called Live From Your Center. What a beautiful title. And that's, in a sense, the essence of how we get to that place of self-realization. Just doing a few of those yoga postures, you feel so centered in yourself, so connected to yourself. And then you leave, you get out into a busy day, and you're feeling much more at peace with yourself. You're coming from your center rather than getting busy and caught up in everything that's going on around you. And so we have, in our particular teachings, the teachings of Yogananda ji, we have the highest way to reach that goal of self-realization of Kriya Yoga, completely internalizing that energy, that life force, and directing that energy. And so it is when we begin to live in that uplifted awareness, in that higher, increased state of energy, we become little lighthouses around the world. And everyone who is around us gets inspired by that, gets touched by that in some way or the other. And that's how we begin to take our steps towards our ultimate goal of self-realization. So thank you.
And self-realization, what a beautiful term and what a beautiful goal to have. And I love how Yogananda, our master, he really wanted us to aspire towards that. That yes, the whole process takes many, many lifetimes, but he also said that in this life we can attain it. Although it may seem to be very, very far away, you know, you look at yourself every day, you look at yourself like how something so small can cause you so much problems or so many reactions. Oh, self-realization, oneness with God, oh my God, that's so far away, that's not for me. But in the end, you realize that only by having such a goal are you going to obtain it. That you cannot get there as long as you are aiming for something small. And at the beginning it's fine, you know, you can meditate to gain a little bit of peace. You can meditate to be a little bit more calm with your family, with your work. And all these things are very fine, of course. But you are only going to go as far as you kind of push yourself or as far as you set your goal to be. These things, that desire for God, that desire to be self-realized, is one of the things that you have to cultivate the most. Nobody can give that to you. You have to have that come from your heart. But the more you desire for it, the more you will be able to put energy towards it, the more that the things around you are going to be arranged so that you can also achieve it, to the point that you will attract a true guru like Yogananda or like any other great master, that they alone can guide you to this. And all these blessings will come to you when you have this desire. Sometimes, for example, in my own case, I didn't come to the spiritual path with that desire at all. But I think also some of us have done that work in other incarnations. I took my discipleship to Yogananda before I even had that strong desire for knowing God. But over time it has expanded, and by God's grace it keeps on expanding and will expand until it is the greatest desire that you have, the only desire that you have. And at that stage you will see that things will come to make you achieve that. That self-realization is the true goal of life, and we all should have that in mind at all times, in all meditations, that when we go, we should go a little bit expecting, but not really, because we had to also do Nishkam Karma in meditation, but saying, oh, well, today may be my day that I find God, or today may be my day that I go into Samadhi. You don't know. In the Bible it says that God comes like a thief at night, unexpected. And you will see that sometimes, whenever you put an effort, even though you are going against all odds, you know, maybe you didn't want to meditate, but just putting that effort, sometimes you attract great blessings. I know that sometimes it would happen to me that we have sometimes 3-hour meditations, and at the beginning was very, very much of a stretch for me. Still is sometimes a stretch. It depends, of course, on many factors. But I remember what would happen many times, that I would be going there, it was early in the morning, 6 a.m., and I would be like very, very sleepy and kind of drowsing while I tried to meditate, until the point I tell myself, well, what's the point of meditating, like, or trying, I'm not getting anywhere, might as well go to bed and get a little rest and try again later. Which, of course, makes total sense, and sometimes it is what we had to do. And I will get up my stuff and stand up, walk out the door, and many times I say, no, wait a minute, let me give it one more try. And very, very often, the act of going back, very quickly, I could have a very beautiful meditation. And I personally think that was God giving me a little reward for my persistence. That we had to understand that it is something that takes time. As this chant said, patient endurance brings you to victory. But once you have God, you want nothing more. At the beginning, Yogananda did say, it's a struggle. But the more you go in the spiritual path, the more as he put it, becomes effortlessly liberating. That joy that you feel, that bliss, that love, that peace is so strong that it just carries everywhere. And you will see that when you have a good meditation, even if it's not like so deep that, you know, you go into this super state or you go breathless, or even before you may become breathless, that you may find such, I don't want to say bliss because I don't know, but such joy in your meditation that that it just recharges you for the entire day. That no matter what happens outside, you are untouched. And those times that you have such meditations are the best times, because also the goal becomes clear, and also you feel it much easier to let go of desires, that let go of false ambitions, to let go of things that are not needed. It is very interesting because at the beginning, the spiritual path, we all say like, well, yes, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to even find God. And while I do this, it is okay that I have this particular habit, or it's okay that, I read this kind of book, or I watch that kind of movie, or I listen to this particular kind of music, or that I have this particular desire. It's okay. And in a way, it is okay. But the more you go, the more you realize also that all these things that seem so little are not as little as we think, as small as we think. That every little thing can really get you off track. That in the end you will see, like you cannot take any of these worldly things in your quest for God. That in the end it all has to go. That you see, like in the Mahabharata, that the Kauravas didn't want to give the Pandavas even this much land, to the point that the Pandavas had to just slay all of the Kauravas. So it is with us, that at the beginning it is also good not to be fanatic. And if you don't have the will, and if you don't have the devotion to let go of all these things at once, it will it will actually hamper you, because all that desire may build in your heart to the point that it bursts, and you go backward. You can go backwards very quickly, or just leave the spiritual path altogether. But eventually you will see that the more you let go of the things, the more free you feel. And I recommend that whenever you're having such, even a little bit of depth in your meditation, release those things. Release them even more than before, because it really helps. Now I want to read from the book of The Essence of Self-Realization what Yogananda says. And I love this definition that he gives of self-realization. Self-realization is the knowledge in all parts of body, mind, and soul that you are now in possession of the kingdom of God, that you do not have to pray that it come to you, that God's omnipresence is your omnipresence, and that all that you need to do is improve your knowing. It is so interesting and so wonderful that Yogananda say all that we have to do is improve our knowing. Also, as Shamini was saying, that it is not something intellectual. It is a knowing. It is something that you feel in you, that you have it in you, and that nobody can take it away from you. And then, of course, it reminds me of how Patanjali defined God realization as a process of smriti, divine memory. That really is very silly, but we just have to remember that we are one with God, because we are part of God, but we have forgotten it. And then you see more and more, and again, as Shamini was saying about the onion, that really what we have to do in the spiritual path is, at the beginning, what we do is we peel ourselves, we peel our attachments, we peel also our identifications with what we are not. A lot of the spiritual path is actually doing that. That this ego wants to identify itself with this. And we had to say, no, I am not that, I am not that, I am not that. But then that's not enough. Or it can be enough, but we also need to, or it's helpful to have the positive approach, which is, then what am I? And to start identifying ourselves with greater things first. At the beginning it may be intellectual, but the more you practice, the more you will feel it. For example, you can identify yourself as energy. That's the goal, in a way, of the energization exercises of Yogananda, to feel ourselves as the energy within us, not so much as the flesh, as the matter. But even that is not our true identity. Then you can identify yourself as consciousness. But then you identify yourself with all consciousness, with the cosmic consciousness, with the one self beyond all self. That we had to release this ego. And it is all inside ourselves. There is a story of a man who was sitting in front of the picture of his guru, and he was throwing roses, flower petals, on the image of his guru. And then he went to a state of ecstasy, of samadhi, and he said, oh, I realize now that I've been worshipping somebody else when that God that I was seeking there is actually within me. I bowed to the God inside myself, and he started putting petals in his own head. And in a way, that is, I think he wasn't talking in a way of ego. It is like that. It is all within ourselves, but we need help to find it. And since we are talking about this samadhi, it's good to note how Master gave us a very good, he described this so beautiful, how even samadhi is in a way the final exam, because there are two stages of samadhi. He said there is first Nirvikalpa Samadhi, that from your ego in your meditation you are able to uplift your consciousness, you are able to identify yourself with that self beyond creation, that reflection of God in creation, you could say. But but the ego is still at the back, like in a cave, calling you, okay, fine, enjoy yourself, but then come back to me. And after our meditation, we come back to the ego. We come back to our limited identification. And it's kind of the final challenge of the devotee, because from there, if you don't take it in a humble way to say like, that this doesn't come from me, that you identify yourself with that higher self, that you don't think that, oh, I have attained this wonderful thing, and it all goes to your ego, then yourself. But he said that it is very easy to develop spiritual pride, because then you may tell yourself, oh, I have become one with everything, I'm as great as Christ, as my guru. And if you take it in that egoic way, it can be a very big pitfall. And then he said that the more we learn to go into that samadhi, that Nirvikalpa Samadhi, then we can attain this last stage of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, where we are one with God, whether we are meditating or not. That we do not create any more karma, not any more ripples in the ocean, that we are liberated. And this process, it is a slow process, but also can be a fast process if we make the effort. In the end, it is all up to us. How much are we going to choose to play with the toys that Satan, the world, is giving us, and how much are we going to really go to our highest aspiration? The masters are giving us all the tools. Now it's up to us to use them, but always remembering in humility what is our goal, and aspire always towards that goal, that all your actions and all your meditations bring you closer and closer to that self-realization. Thank you very much for being with us. We wish you a good night. And the next Friday, we may surprise you. We are not sure which book we are going to be taking next, or whoever is talking next is going to take. But I'm sure it's going to be wonderful, and we hope you can join us in this adventure together.
Thank you.
Thank you.